I carried the wounded alien woman on my back. Do you know I'm a princess, human? She said. Eli stumbled through the thick undergrowth, his boots sinking slightly in the soft, alien soil. Every step brought a fresh spray of strange blue spores that glimmered faintly in the dim light filtering through the giant trees. He had been walking for what felt like hours, his pack heavy, his throat dry, and the hum of distant insect-like creatures echoing in the jungle. He had crashed here only 2 days ago, and already he understood that this planet was alive in ways he had never imagined. A sharp cry cut through the air, high-pitched and full of fear. Eli froze, his heart pounding. It was not the sound of a wild animal he had heard before. It was something more delicate, more desperate. Without thinking, he pushed through the dense leaves toward the noise, branches scratching his face and arms. That was when he saw her. She was lying on the ground, a small figure with pale, silvery skin that shimmered faintly even in the shadowy jungle. Her body was twisted, one leg bent at an odd angle, and her chest heaved as she tried to catch her breath. Her long hair, like strands of liquid silver, was matted with dirt and blood. Despite her injuries, her eyes were sharp and defiant, glinting with a strange, intelligent light. Eli took a cautious step forward. "Hey, are you okay?" His voice sounded rough in the silent jungle. The alien woman opened her eyes wider, staring at him as if he were a predator. "Do not touch me," she hissed, her voice melodic but fierce. I am no ordinary creature." Eli frowned. "I'm not going to hurt you, but you're hurt badly. You need help." Her gaze softened for a brief second, then flared again. "Do you know who I am?" she demanded. "I am Princess Arya of the Luminara. I am not to be carried by a human." Eli raised his hands slowly. "Look, I don't care if you're a princess or a queen or whatever. You're hurt and you can't walk. I can carry you." The alien princess hesitated, her pride warring with her need. She tried to stand but collapsed back onto the ground with a groan, her glowing hands pressed weakly against her leg. Eli didn't wait for her permission. He knelt and gently lifted her onto his back, feeling her light weight, surprisingly small for someone who seemed regal. "Put me down," she demanded, but her voice lacked conviction. I am not a burden." "You're not a burden," Eli said, steadying himself as he rose. "You're my responsibility now. If we stay here, those things out there, whatever chased you will find us. We move." The jungle seemed to close around them, a living wall of green and shadows. Strange plants with curling tendrils reached out as if curious about the human carrying an alien. Eli stepped carefully, his boots crunching on fallen leaves, branches scraping against his jacket. He kept glancing back at her, noticing how her eyes followed every movement, sharp and calculating. You are bold for a human," she said after a moment. Her voice was quieter now, a mixture of irritation and reluctant admiration. "Few would dare to touch me, to lift me." "Why?" Eli shrugged, though she couldn't see it. "Because if I leave you here, you die. Humans help when it's needed," she snorted softly. "Humans," she murmured, then almost to herself she added, "perhaps not all are weak." They moved slowly through the jungle. Every so often, Eli had to stop, letting her adjust on his back. Her body was light, but the uneven terrain made every step a challenge. Her breathing was shallow, and he could feel the faint tremor of pain. He was exhausted, but he refused to rest for long. The predators of this world were patient and swift. Hours passed, or maybe only minutes. Time seemed strange in the dense forest. At one point, they came upon a clearing. The sunlight here was softer, golden, and fell across a small pool of clear water. Eli set her down gently at the edge. "Drink," he said, pointing to the water. "It's clean." She glanced at him suspiciously, then bent down and took a few sips, her movements graceful even in her weakened state. After drinking, she looked up at him, and for the first time, Eli saw something almost human in her expression, gratitude mixed with frustration. "You fight well," she said, "and yet you are reckless." "I've survived this long," Eli said. "Recklessness is sometimes all you have." She studied him as if trying to understand a creature so different from herself. "You are human, you're kind, you are fragile yet strange, you have courage." Eli smiled faintly. "We do what we must." Suddenly, a rustling sound came from the trees. Eli's body tensed immediately. From the shadows emerged creatures unlike anything he had ever seen. They were tall, skeletal, with multiple limbs and glowing eyes. They moved with uncanny speed and precision. Princess Arya groaned in pain as she tried to rise, but Eli grabbed her hand. "Stay down," he whispered. The creatures paused for a moment, sensing movement. Eli weighed his options. They could run deeper into the jungle, but he knew the creatures were faster. He couldn't fight them head-on, he was just a human. Then he remembered the fallen logs and thick vines around the clearing. "Hold on," he muttered. With Princess Arya on his back, he ran in a zigzag pattern, dodging the first attacks. Using the vines, he swung himself across a narrow gap, narrowly avoiding snapping branches. One of the creatures lunged but caught only air. The princess let out a gasp, then laughed softly through gritted teeth. "Bold, foolish human," she said. "Perhaps you are braver than I imagined." Eli didn't respond. His focus was on survival. He led them through the jungle, using every trick he knew, misleading trails, dropping rocks to create noise, and hiding among the giant roots. Finally, they reached a small cave hidden behind a waterfall. The roar of falling water masked their approach. Inside, the cave was cool and damp. Eli set her down gently, supporting her back against the smooth wall. She groaned, clearly exhausted, but managed a small smile. "You saved me," she said quietly. "Not many would, not many could." Eli shrugged. "It's what humans do, we help." Her gaze lingered on him. "I did not expect mercy, not from your kind. Perhaps I misjudged humans." Eli glanced around the cave, checking for any signs of the creatures. "We're not safe yet. You need to rest, but we have to keep moving eventually. The jungle is alive. It doesn't forgive weakness." Arya nodded, leaning against the wall. Her pride had not faded, but there was a vulnerability in her eyes that she did not hide. "You carry not just my body, human, but my dignity. That is unusual, perhaps remarkable." For the first time, Eli allowed himself a moment of calm. The princess was safe, at least for now. The creatures of the jungle were still out there, but he had found a rhythm, one step at a time, one choice at a time. Hours turned into night. The cave offered shelter, and the moon of this alien world bathed the opening in silver light. The stars were different here, brighter, sharper, unfamiliar. Eli sat near the entrance, keeping watch while Arya rested. She had removed the heavy cloak that marked her royalty, revealing the elegant lines of her alien armor beneath the wounds and scratches. "You carry more than I expected, human," she said after a long pause. "Perhaps you are stronger than you know." Eli smiled faintly, looking at the stars. "Strength isn't just muscles," he said. "It's knowing when to act and sometimes when to care." Arya's lips curved into a faint smile. "Then, perhaps we are not so different. You and I, the jungle, remained alive outside the cave, with distant cries and rustling leaves." Eli tightened the strap of his pack and prepared for what would come next. He had rescued a princess, yes, but he had also discovered something about himself, a resilience he hadn't fully understood until now. Sleep came fitfully, with one eye always on the shadows. But when he closed his eyes, he dreamed not of the dangers, but of the journey ahead. A journey that would test his courage, his wits, and the limits of what it meant to be human. And somewhere deep inside, he knew that carrying this wounded alien woman was only the beginning. The dawn would bring more challenges, more strange worlds, and perhaps the first glimmers of trust between two very different species. But for now, Eli allowed himself a moment of quiet. The princess was alive. He had done what humans did best. He survived, he protected, and he refused to give up. The sun had begun to sink behind the jagged mountains, casting long shadows across the valley where Ethan had carried the alien woman. He set her down gently on the soft grass, careful not to jostle her injured body. Her breathing was shallow, and the wound along her side, though bandaged as best as he could, still oozed dark blood. Ethan's hands were trembling slightly, not from fear, but from exhaustion and the weight of responsibility pressing on his chest. You will be all right," he said, more to himself than to her. "I promise." The alien woman stirred slightly, her large, violet eyes opening to meet his. There was a mix of pain and something else in those eyes, a faint glow of recognition, of expectation. She attempted a weak smile, though it barely reached her eyes. I am grateful," she whispered, her voice soft but melodic, carrying a tone that seemed both foreign and familiar. Ethan realized immediately that this was no ordinary alien. The grace in her words, the way she held herself even in pain, it hinted at someone important. "I'm Ethan," he said, kneeling beside her. "I don't even know if you can understand me, but I'm here. I'll help you." Her lips curled faintly and she coughed, wincing at the movement. "Ethan, I know you do not yet understand who I am," she said slowly, deliberately. "But you have shown courage beyond expectation, and for that I trust you." Ethan blinked. "Trust me, I'm just a human. I've carried you out of danger, yes, but I'm not a hero." I just did what I had to do. You carried me, she said, her voice gaining strength despite her injuries. Not because you were ordered, not because you hoped for reward, but because it was the right thing. That makes you extraordinary. Her words made Ethan pause. He had always thought of humans as clever, resilient, resourceful, but extraordinary. That was something else entirely. And yet here he was, facing the truth of her words, feeling both honored and overwhelmed. Why were you in danger? Ethan asked cautiously, settling beside her. He carefully examined the wound again, pressing lightly to see if it would react painfully. She flinched slightly but did not pull away. I am Lyra, she said finally, the name rolling off her tongue with elegance. Princess Lyra of the Zeridian Empire. Ethan froze. His mind spun as he tried to process what she had just said. Princess of an empire. He had been carrying royalty, and for all this time he had thought she was just injured, lost, and in need of help. You're a princess, he stammered. You're saying I carried a royal alien on my back? She nodded, a faint smile touching her lips. Yes. And I am grateful, though I did not expect a human to be the one to save me. Most of my people would have hesitated. Ethan shook his head, laughing nervously. Well, I guess humans are unpredictable. Maybe that's our advantage. I just did what I thought was right. Lyra's eyes softened as she looked at him. You did more than what you thought. You saved a life, and perhaps unknowingly you have saved many more. The Zeridian Empire, it is large and powerful, but fragile when trust is broken. You have shown me that even the smallest creatures can carry the weight of destiny. Ethan felt a chill run down his spine. She spoke as if the universe itself depended on the choices of individuals, and here he was, a single human, suddenly at the center of something vast and unknowable. He swallowed, trying to find words that would match her intensity. I don't even know what to say. I'm just a man from Earth. I'm not used to, well, this kind of responsibility. Lyra reached out weakly and placed a hand on his. The touch was light, yet it carried a warmth that made Ethan's heart beat faster. Responsibility is not always about choice, she said softly. Sometimes it is given and we carry it because someone must. For a moment, silence fell between them. The wind rustled through the tall grass, carrying the scent of alien flowers and distant fires. Ethan felt the enormity of the moment pressing on him. He had carried her over cliffs, through storms, and past danger, yet now in the quiet he understood that the journey was only beginning. Where do we go from here? He asked finally, his voice low. Lyra took a shallow breath, her eyes scanning the horizon. We must reach the northern stronghold. There I can summon help and perhaps begin to uncover the truth. The truth? Ethan asked, frowning. What truth? Her expression darkened slightly, though the glow in her eyes never faded. There are those within my empire who would see it fall. They seek to overthrow the rightful leadership to create chaos, and they are ruthless. I was targeted because I stand in their way. Ethan's heart sank. The stakes were higher than he had imagined. Not only was he carrying a wounded alien princess across a hostile land, but they were now part of a larger, deadly game of power and betrayal. Then we have to be careful, he said firmly. I won't let anything happen to you, not while I'm here. Lyra's lips curved into a small, genuine smile. I believe you, she whispered, and that belief may be more powerful than any weapon they possess. The evening deepened into night, and the valley grew quiet except for the distant sounds of alien wildlife. Ethan set up a small fire, careful to conceal its light from any prying eyes. He helped Lyra lie down on a bed of ferns and blankets he had found along the way. Her breathing became steadier, and the tension in her body eased, though the pain remained. I should rest, she murmured. You have done more than enough for one day. Even heroes need sleep. Ethan shook his head. I'm not a hero, but I will stay here with you. I can't leave you alone. She placed her hand lightly on his arm. Then you will see humans are not merely survivors. You can be guardians as well. Night fell fully, and the stars emerged in the alien sky. Ethan looked up, the constellations unfamiliar but beautiful. He felt the weight of his promise, the responsibility of protecting Lyra, and the awareness that the world, or perhaps even worlds, depended on what came next. Hours passed. Ethan kept watch while Lyra rested, listening to the distant hum of alien life and the occasional crackle from the fire. His mind wandered to his home on Earth, to people who would never imagine him here, carrying an alien princess across a dangerous planet. Yet in that quiet night he understood something profound. Human courage and cleverness could shine even in the darkest corners of the galaxy. When dawn began to break, painting the sky with streaks of pink and gold, Lyra stirred. She looked at Ethan with gratitude and a spark of determination. "We must move," she said. "There is little time, and the enemy grows bolder with each passing hour." Ethan nodded, helping her to her feet. Her injuries had not healed fully, but she was stronger now, bolstered by rest and by the strange trust that had formed between them. Together, they stepped into the morning light, ready to face the perils ahead, each relying on the other in ways neither had anticipated. And so the journey continued, not just across alien lands, but into a story of courage, trust, and the unlikely heroism of a human carrying the weight of worlds on his back. The morning air was crisp, carrying the scent of alien flora and the faint metallic tang of the distant battlefield. Ethan helped Lyra steady herself as they began moving through the rugged terrain. Every step was careful. The princess still bore the injuries that had nearly taken her life the day before. Her steps were measured, but she did not falter, and Ethan admired her quiet strength. She was a leader, and yet in this moment vulnerable in a way that made him even more determined to protect her. The landscape stretched endlessly, a mixture of jagged rocks, glowing forests, and rolling hills that seemed to go on forever. Strange, luminescent plants swayed gently in the wind, their soft glow giving the surroundings an ethereal beauty. It was peaceful, almost deceptively so, and Ethan knew danger could be lurking in every shadow. "You must be tired," Lyra said softly, breaking the silence. Her voice, though still weak, carried a quiet authority that seemed to make even the wind pause. "We do not need to rush. The enemy is cautious, but they are not everywhere. Not yet." Ethan shook his head. "I'm fine. As long as you can walk, I can keep going." "I've carried worse, haven't I?" He smiled, trying to keep the mood light despite the tension around them. Lyra chuckled faintly, the sound like music in the quiet morning. "You have carried more than my body," she said, her eyes meeting his. "You have carried trust and courage. Those are heavier burdens than any pack of supplies." He felt a warmth in his chest at her words. They had been through so much already, and yet the journey was only beginning. Every time he thought of turning back, he remembered her words and the look in her eyes when she first revealed she was a princess. They were trusting him, placing their survival in the hands of a human who had no idea how extraordinary he truly was. They moved steadily, careful to stay in the shadows whenever possible. Ethan led them along hidden paths, making use of every rock formation, every fold in the terrain to shield them from prying eyes. The aliens pursuing Lyra were not careless, and he knew one wrong move could mean death. But Ethan had learned something during the days of carrying her through danger. Humans could think in ways others did not expect. He could outsmart those who relied solely on brute strength or conventional tactics. By midday, they reached a dense forest, where tall trees with translucent leaves formed a natural canopy. Light filtered through, casting kaleidoscopic patterns on the forest floor. The air was thick but breathable, and the sounds of alien creatures moving in the underbrush reminded them they were not alone. Ethan paused, examining their surroundings. "We need to keep moving, but we also need cover," he whispered. He gestured to a fallen tree that lay across a shallow ravine. "That could give us a hiding place if anyone comes this way." Lyra nodded, trusting his judgment completely. "You are clever," she said softly. "Most of my soldiers would not think of using the environment in such a way. Humans are unpredictable." Ethan smiled faintly. "Unpredictable enough to survive, at least." They made their way to the fallen tree, using it as a bridge across the ravine. Ethan went first, testing its stability, then guided Lyra carefully across. She moved slowly, her hands gripping his as he helped her over. When she reached the other side, she paused and looked at him. "You risk your life every moment for me," she said. "Do you not fear what they might do to you?" Ethan shrugged. "Of course I do, but fear is useless if you do nothing. If I stop, if I hesitate, we're both lost. I'd rather face danger head-on than sit back and watch it happen." Lyra's expression softened. She had spent her life surrounded by soldiers and advisors, all of whom acted according to strict protocol and cautious strategy. Ethan's approach was different, bold, direct, and daring. She realized that humans had a kind of bravery her people often underestimated. As they moved deeper into the forest, they encountered signs of life, footprints, broken branches, and the occasional discarded weapon. It was clear that the enemy had passed through recently. Ethan's heart raced as he scanned the surroundings, noting every detail. He remembered every trick, every path he had taken before in similar situations. His mind worked like a machine, calculating angles, distances, and escape routes. "We are being watched," he whispered. He crouched low and motioned for Lyra to do the same. The underbrush rustled slightly ahead, and two figures emerged, humanoid but not quite human, moving with deliberate stealth. Ethan recognized them as scouts, soldiers sent to track them down. Lyra instinctively reached for her weapon, but Ethan gently stopped her. "Let me handle this," he said. "We don't need a fight yet. We need to survive." Using the shadows and the natural cover of the trees, Ethan crept closer. He found a thick vine hanging from a branch and tied it to a rock, creating a simple trap that would ensnare anyone stepping into it. He then pulled a few loose branches and scattered them near the trail to create noise in a different direction. When the scouts reached the area, one of them tripped the vine, letting out a surprised cry as it tangled him up. The other looked around in confusion, trying to locate the source of the noise. Ethan seized the opportunity and silently signaled Lyra to move with him along a different path. They slipped past the scouts without being detected, their hearts pounding but spirits lifted by their success. "You are remarkable," Lyra whispered once they were safe. "I have seen many warriors, many heroes, but your mind, it is unlike anything I have encountered." Ethan shrugged again, a small smile on his face. "I'm just a human. I do what I have to do. I can't help it if it works." Lyra's gaze lingered on him, thoughtful. "Perhaps it is precisely your simplicity, your lack of pretense, that makes you extraordinary. Most beings think too much of rank, of power, of plans. Humans, you act with instinct, with courage, and that is rare." They moved cautiously for hours, crossing streams and climbing over rocky ridges. Each obstacle tested them, but Ethan's ingenuity and Lyra's determination kept them going. At one point, a cliff blocked their path, sheer and treacherous. Lyra hesitated, her injured leg trembling slightly. Ethan assessed the climb. "We can do this," he said confidently. "I'll go first and anchor the rope, then you follow carefully. I won't let you fall." With skill and patience, he helped her navigate the climb, offering guidance and steady hands. When they reached the top, Lyra took a moment to catch her breath and looked down at the valley below. "You have saved me again," she said. "I cannot thank you enough." "You don't need to," Ethan replied. "Just keep moving, keep surviving, that's all that matters." As evening approached, they reached a plateau overlooking a small settlement. Smoke rose from chimneys, and Ethan noted the signs of life. It could be a place to rest, to gather food, or perhaps to find allies. But he also knew it could be a trap. The enemy could be waiting. "We need to be careful," he said, scanning the village with a keen eye. "We can't just walk in, we need a plan." Lyra nodded, her eyes sharp despite fatigue. "I trust your judgment," she said. "You have already guided me through more than any of my advisors could imagine. We will proceed as you see fit." Ethan studied the settlement. Using rocks, shadows, and the natural terrain, he devised a route that would allow them to approach unnoticed. He whispered instructions to Lyra, and they moved like shadows, slipping through alleys and behind walls. Their hearts raced, but their coordination was perfect, each step measured, each motion silent. They reached the edge of the settlement, hidden behind a large stone wall. Ethan looked at Lyra. "We can rest here for the night. The wall will give us cover, and we can scout the area before moving forward." She smiled faintly, a mixture of relief and admiration in her eyes. "You have a way of seeing danger and opportunity at the same time," she said. "It is impressive." Ethan nodded, feeling both pride and humility. "It's all about observation. You learn quickly what's around you, what's safe and what's not. Humans, we survive by paying attention." They settled behind the wall, creating a small, concealed space where they could rest. Ethan took a moment to inspect Lyra's injuries again, cleaning them and adjusting the bandages. She winced but did not complain. "You are too kind," she said softly. "Most humans would leave me to survive on my own, or worse, avoid me entirely. You are different." "I'm just trying to do what's right," Ethan replied. "No one should be left behind, not if I can help it." Night fell again, and the stars shone brightly in the alien sky. The sounds of the settlement below reached them faintly, but Ethan kept watch, alert for any signs of danger. Lyra rested, drawing strength from his presence. "This journey, it is far from over," she whispered, almost to herself. "But with you, perhaps there is hope." Ethan nodded, feeling the weight of her words. They were more than hope. They were a bond forged in adversity, in trust, and in courage. Together they would face the dangers ahead, and together they would survive. The morning air was heavy with mist as Ethan and Lyra prepared to leave the settlement. They had spent the night hidden behind the stone wall, gathering their strength and observing the villagers. No one had seen them, and the small fire they had kept low had gone unnoticed. Ethan's mind was alert, running through every detail of their surroundings. Every rock, every shadow, every sound mattered. Lyra rose carefully, her injuries still tender but improving. She adjusted the bandages Ethan had placed and flexed her fingers slowly. "I feel stronger than yesterday," she said. "Thanks to you." Ethan shook his head with a small smile. "You're the one moving through all this pain. I just try not to get in the way." Lyra studied him for a moment, her violet eyes reflecting a mixture of gratitude and thoughtfulness. "You underestimate yourself, human. Your mind is sharper than most I have seen. Your courage, it is rare. Humans have always been underestimated, but your actions prove that underestimation is a mistake." Ethan felt a quiet warmth in his chest at her words. It was one thing to carry her through danger, but it was another to earn her respect. "I'm just trying to survive." "And keep you alive," Lyra nodded solemnly. "That is more than enough." They moved cautiously through the settlement, keeping to the shadows. Ethan noted every guard post, every path, every sound that might indicate danger. They needed supplies for the journey ahead, but more than that, they needed information. Lyra whispered the locations of known allies and enemy positions she had learned from the scattered settlements she had visited before. As they moved toward the northern road, a strange sensation crept over Ethan. Something felt wrong. The air itself seemed tense as if it held its breath. He paused, scanning the trees and rooftops with sharp eyes. "Ethan," Lyra whispered, "what is it?" He crouched, lowering his voice. "I don't know yet, but I feel we are being watched. Be ready." They moved slowly, sticking to shadows and cover. A figure appeared on a distant rooftop, barely visible in the morning haze. Ethan's heart pounded, but he remained calm. He signaled Lyra to stay low. The figure moved silently, scanning the area, and then disappeared from view. "They are tracking us," Ethan said quietly. "I think someone within your empire has sent them." Lyra's eyes widened slightly. "Betrayal," she whispered. "Within my own ranks, I suspected it, but now it is clear we cannot trust anyone completely." Ethan's jaw tightened. "Then we watch each other's backs, no mistakes, no hesitation. We move carefully and we survive." For hours, they navigated forests, streams, and rocky ridges. Each obstacle tested them, but Ethan's ingenuity and Lyra's determination kept them moving. They encountered alien wildlife, strange and dangerous, yet avoided confrontation with quick thinking and careful movement. At one point, a massive predator with glowing eyes emerged from the underbrush. Ethan froze, signaling Lyra to remain silent. Using a decoy and a small fire he had prepared earlier, he drew the creature away without making a sound. Lyra's eyes shone with admiration. "You think of everything," she whispered. "Most of my soldiers would panic in the face of such a creature." Ethan smiled faintly. "Panic doesn't help, observation helps, and humans, we notice things others ignore." As night approached, they reached the edge of a cliff overlooking a valley. Below, the lights of a large settlement flickered. Ethan scanned the area, noting patrols and watchtowers. This was likely a hub for the enemy faction that sought to capture Lyra. "We cannot pass through that valley," Ethan said. "Too many guards, we need another way." Lyra nodded. "I know of a path through the eastern hills. It is longer but safer, fewer patrols, fewer eyes. We can reach the stronghold if we take it." They climbed down from the cliff carefully, using hidden crevices and natural ledges. The path was steep and treacherous, but Ethan's hands were steady, and Lyra followed his guidance. Hours passed, the sun setting behind distant mountains. The sky turned a deep shade of violet, mirroring the color of Lyra's eyes. As they rested briefly, Lyra spoke softly. "Ethan, you have carried me across deserts, cliffs, and forests. You have risked your life countless times. Why do you do this?" Ethan looked at her, his eyes tired but steady. "Because it is right, because no one else is here, because I cannot leave you to face this alone." She smiled faintly. "That is human courage, I see it now. You are extraordinary not because of strength, but because of your heart and mind. Most beings fail to understand that." The next day, they moved into the hills. The terrain was rough, but it offered cover from distant patrols. They followed narrow paths hidden under overhanging rocks and dense foliage. Ethan noticed signs of the enemy, broken branches, footprints, and discarded equipment. Someone had been there recently, tracking them. "They are close," Ethan whispered. "We need to be careful." "Move quietly, follow me." Hours later, as they crossed a narrow ridge, they were ambushed. From above, enemy soldiers dropped silently onto the path, surrounding them. Ethan reacted quickly. Using rocks and branches, he created diversions, throwing them in different directions. Lyra drew her weapon, but Ethan stopped her. "Let me handle this," he said. "We don't need a fight we cannot win." With precise movements, he lured some of the soldiers into a trap, using the terrain to his advantage. Branches snapped, rocks fell, and the enemy stumbled. Lyra watched, amazed at his strategy. Humans were clever, she realized, and unpredictability was their strength. Once the immediate danger passed, they continued their journey, more cautious than ever. Lyra's injuries slowed them, but her spirit remained unbroken. She moved with determination, trusting Ethan completely. As evening fell, they found a hidden cave in the hillside. It offered shelter and a vantage point over the valley below. Ethan checked the perimeter, ensuring it was safe. Lyra rested, leaning against the wall, and allowed herself a brief moment of relief. "You have saved me again," she said quietly. "I do not know how to repay you." Ethan smiled faintly. "Just stay alive, that's all I need." Lyra studied him thoughtfully. "You are more than a protector, Ethan. You are a friend, a guide, perhaps even the hope my people need. I see now that humans, we should never underestimate them." They spent the night in the cave, keeping watch in shifts. Ethan stayed alert, listening for any sign of pursuit. The stars above were unfamiliar but beautiful, casting a faint glow into the cave. Lyra rested beside him, her breathing steady but her mind clearly still alert. The next morning, they continued through the hills. The path was difficult, winding through rocky passes and dense forests. Each step tested their endurance, but they pressed on. Ethan's mind worked constantly, anticipating danger, finding safe paths, and ensuring Lyra's injuries did not worsen. By midday, they reached a river, its waters clear but swift. Crossing it was dangerous, but Ethan found a fallen tree that acted as a bridge. Carefully, he guided Lyra across, her hands gripping his as he steadied her. "You are incredible," she said once they reached the other side. "I do not know if anyone else could have carried me this far," Ethan shrugged. "I'm just a human, I do what I have to do." Lyra smiled faintly. "Perhaps, but doing what is necessary, that is the mark of greatness." As they continued, they began to notice signs of larger forces at work. Strange markers etched into trees, faint signals left by scouts, and the occasional abandoned camp suggested that they were moving through territory controlled by the enemy. Ethan remained vigilant, using every skill he had to navigate safely. Finally, as the sun began to set, they reached the edge of the northern stronghold's territory. Ethan surveyed the area, noting patrols, walls, and watchtowers. This was the final stretch before safety, but also the most dangerous. "We are close," Lyra whispered. "If we can reach the stronghold, I can summon reinforcements and uncover the truth, but we must be careful. One mistake." Ethan nodded. "I know. We move quietly, stick to the shadows, and trust our instincts. We survive this together." And so, with determination in their hearts and courage in their steps, Ethan and Lyra prepared to face the final challenge. Betrayal, danger, and uncertainty awaited them, but they had come too far to turn back. Together, they would fight, survive, and uncover the truth that could change everything. The night fell and the stronghold's walls loomed in the distance, a beacon of hope and danger intertwined. Ethan tightened his grip on Lyra's hand, ready to face whatever lay ahead. In that moment, he realized that humans were capable of far more than anyone could imagine, and that courage, ingenuity, and trust could turn the tide even in the darkest of battles. The morning sun crept over the horizon, painting the alien sky in shades of orange and pink. Ethan and Lyra crouched behind a ridge, staring at the towering walls of the northern stronghold. The fortress loomed like a giant sentinel over the valley below, its surface glinting in the sunlight. Towers reached toward the clouds, and patrols moved in precise patterns. This was the heart of her empire's power, but also the center of danger. Every step inside could mean confrontation with enemies hidden within her own ranks. Ethan tightened the straps of his pack, checking the supplies they had gathered on the journey. Every rope, every ration, every simple tool could be the difference between life and death. He glanced at Lyra, who stood tall despite her lingering injuries. Her expression was a mix of determination, exhaustion, and the quiet fire of someone who had endured betrayal and survived against overwhelming odds. "We can do this," Ethan said, his voice steady. We've come too far to stop now. We move carefully, we stay alert, and we trust each other. Lyra nodded. Yes, but remember the enemies we face here are not simple. Some wear the face of allies. We must be vigilant at all times. Together, they descended into the valley, keeping to shadows and natural cover. The patrols were diligent, their eyes sharp, but Ethan's careful observations and Lyra's intimate knowledge of the terrain allowed them to move undetected. Every step was measured, every movement deliberate. They avoided open spaces and tracked the patterns of the guards, learning which areas were most dangerous and which offered safe passage. As they approached the outer wall of the stronghold, Ethan's mind raced. Scaling such a fortress was dangerous, but he had always relied on creativity and careful planning. He noticed a drainage channel running beneath one of the walls, partially hidden by vegetation. It might be narrow and dark, but it offered a chance to enter unseen. We go through there, he whispered to Lyra. It's tight, it's dark, but it's the safest way in. Lyra studied the channel, her eyes assessing its width and stability. I can do this, she said, and I trust you to lead the way. They squeezed into the narrow passage, the walls pressing close around them. Every movement had to be careful. The channel was slick with moisture, and one wrong step could send them sliding into the shadows of the enemy below. Ethan led the way, testing each foothold and handhold before moving. Lyra followed, relying on his guidance and the strength of her own determination. After what felt like hours, the passage opened into a small, hidden courtyard within the stronghold. They were inside unseen, but far from safe. Patrols moved above, and the hum of activity echoed through the fortress. Ethan surveyed the area, plotting their next move. We need to find the command center, he said quietly. If we can reach it, Lyra can call for reinforcements and expose those who betrayed her. Lyra nodded, her violet eyes gleaming with resolve. Lead the way, human, show me the path. They moved through the courtyard, sticking to shadows, climbing stairways and squeezing through narrow corridors. Every turn was tense, every sound amplified. They paused frequently to listen, observing the movements of soldiers and servants alike. Ethan's instincts guided them, and Lyra's knowledge of her empire's layout helped them avoid traps and dead ends. Finally, they reached a heavily guarded hallway leading to the command center. 2 guards stood at the entrance, their weapons poised, alert to any threat. Ethan crouched behind a nearby column, whispering to Lyra. I have a plan, he said. We create a distraction. You sneak past while they investigate. I'll follow as soon as it's safe. Lyra studied him for a moment, then nodded. Do it. Ethan gathered loose stones and carefully placed them near a stack of crates across the hall. With a flick, he sent one tumbling, creating a clattering noise. The guards immediately turned toward the sound, their attention focused entirely on the distraction. Lyra moved silently, slipping past them into the command center. Ethan waited until the guards returned to their positions, then darted forward, following her path. Inside the command center, Lyra moved quickly to a communication console. She scanned the room, her fingers flying over the controls. Messages, signals, and reports flooded the interface. She began sending out encrypted alerts, contacting loyal forces within the Empire. Reinforcements were on their way. Ethan watched the doorway, alert for any approaching danger. Guards would soon realize something was amiss. He tightened his grip on the simple tools he had carried, ready to act. Suddenly, the doors burst open and a squad of soldiers charged in. Ethan reacted instantly, using the environment to his advantage. He kicked over a table, creating a barrier, and pushed crates to slow their advance. Lyra fired her weapon with precision, her movements quick despite her injuries. Together, they fought not with brute force alone, but with strategy, using their understanding of the space to outmaneuver the attackers. The battle was intense, but their combined skill and trust allowed them to gain the upper hand. The remaining soldiers fled, leaving the command center in chaos. Ethan and Lyra took a moment to catch their breath, the adrenaline of the confrontation still coursing through their veins. You are remarkable, Lyra said, her voice soft but filled with awe. I have witnessed courage before, but what you have shown, it is beyond anything I imagined. Ethan shook his head, trying to downplay it. We did what we had to do, that's all. Lyra smiled faintly, her hand brushing against his. No, you did more than survive. You carried not just me, but hope, courage, and trust. That is rare in any being. The communication console began to flash, signaling the arrival of reinforcements. Loyal soldiers from the Empire poured into the command center, securing the area and restoring order. Lyra stood tall, her injuries forgotten for a moment as she addressed her allies. "Humans are not to be underestimated," she said, her voice carrying across the room. "And one human in particular has shown us the power of courage, ingenuity, and heart. His name is Ethan, and without him I would not be here today." Ethan felt a mix of pride and humility. He had never sought recognition, but the acknowledgement from Lyra, a princess and leader, meant more than he could express. He had started this journey as a simple explorer, yet he had become part of something far greater. The loyal forces moved swiftly to root out the traitors within the Empire. Evidence of betrayal was exposed, and those who had sought to destabilize the leadership were captured or neutralized. Lyra's position as princess was secured, and the Empire began to rebuild, stronger and more united than before. As the day wore on, Lyra and Ethan stood together on a balcony overlooking the city below. The sun shone brightly, reflecting off the towers and walls of the stronghold. The city was alive with activity, a testament to resilience and determination. "You have changed everything," Lyra said softly, her hand resting lightly on Ethan's arm. "Without you, I do not know what would have become of my people. You carried more than my body. You carried the future of the Empire." Ethan looked at her, his heart swelling with a sense of purpose he had never known. "I didn't do it for praise or glory," he said. "I did it because it was right, because someone had to. That's what humans do. We survive, we fight, and we protect." Lyra smiled, her eyes reflecting admiration and gratitude. "And in doing so, you have proven that humans are extraordinary, not because of strength, not because of weapons, but because of courage, heart, and the ability to act when others hesitate. You are a hero, Ethan." He shook his head, smiling faintly. "I'm just a human, but thank you." The two of them stood in silence for a moment, watching the city below and the empire they had helped save. The journey had been long, dangerous, and filled with challenges that tested every skill and ounce of courage they possessed. Yet they had succeeded, and in doing so, had forged a bond of trust and respect that would endure. As night fell over the stronghold, stars appearing in the alien sky, Ethan felt a quiet sense of fulfillment. The adventure was over, but the memory of their journey, the trust, the courage, and the challenges overcome, would remain with him forever. Lyra looked at him, her eyes full of gratitude and pride. "You carried me across worlds, human, and in doing so you carried the hope of many. Remember that. Humanity is more than strength. It is courage, ingenuity, and heart. You have shown that today." Ethan nodded, feeling the weight of her words. They had faced betrayal, danger, and near death, yet they had emerged victorious. He had discovered something profound, that human spirit, determination, and intelligence could make a difference even in a galaxy filled with power beyond imagining. And so, with the stars shining above and the city below safe once more, Ethan and Lyra stood together, a human and an alien princess, bonded by trust, courage, and the extraordinary journey they had shared. The Empire was saved, the traitors exposed, and the future secure. Ethan had carried more than Lyra. He had carried hope, courage, and the belief that even one human could change the fate of worlds. And in doing so, he had proven what many had underestimated, that humans were not only survivors, they were heroes in their own right. The wind carried the scent of alien flowers, the sounds of life, and the quiet hum of a city returning to peace. Ethan took a deep breath, feeling the enormity of what they had accomplished. Lyra stood beside him, her presence a reminder that courage, trust, and determination could overcome even the greatest obstacles. The journey had ended, but the story of their bravery would echo across the Empire, a tale of a human who carried an alien princess on his back, faced impossible odds, and emerged victorious. Humanity had been proven extraordinary, and Ethan knew that this was only the beginning of adventures yet to come.